What if the cosmos is actually necessary? What if the cosmos is necessary and serves as the foundation, perhaps a scenario like the multiverse, where there's no intelligent being that is, oh, let me make a universe. Here we go. I am now made a universe. That universe is contingent upon me. What if instead there's a cosmos that we can't explore and we can't understand, that has mechanisms in it that causes universes to arise? Now, I have no way of demonstrating that this is in fact the case, but the possibility that this is the case, or the fact that nobody's demonstrated that it's not the case, shows us that they cannot assert that the best explanation for the universe is contingent, is a god, because they cannot show which of the two possibilities we have, a necessary cosmos that has the necessary capability of producing universes, or a god that has the necessary characteristics to produce a universe. They have no way to demonstrate which of those two is in fact more likely. So the argument from contingency is one version of a cosmological argument. There are a variety of different versions of the argument from contingency, and at least all of the ones that I've seen have within them this bald, unsupported assertion that the foundational thing upon which the universe is contingent is a god. They don't tell us anything about the characteristics of this god within the arguments. They'll try and do that outside of it. This god is eternal and powerful, et cetera, et cetera. And as I mentioned, it relies on our intuitions, living in a culture where a lot of people believe in a god, people talk about a god. What happens is when you present something like this and you say, okay, if our universe is contingent, if it's not necessary, if it could have been the case that our universe didn't come into existence, which we're not sure if that's the case or not, what is the best explanation for this? And in cultures...
Okay, so before we get into the cultural shifts and whatnot, what do you think about this a little bit, Josh?
I think we agree on quite a lot here, but it's just kind of the idea that I think the idea of him saying, well, the God hypothesis as the necessary being or the necessary foundation is quite similar as the cosmos as necessary foundation, without even giving any arguments for why the cosmos is kind of a 50-50. Of course, he says it's a 50-50 because, of course, in the argument that he presented, there was no kind of linking premise or any argument from limits here to kind of solve the gap problem. But assume there is absolutely no arguments for this kind of to solve the gap problem. But he still says that there's kind of this 50-50 understanding between a necessary cause of the universe being God or the necessary cause of the universe being a cosmos. Then surely it does seem to lead to a belief or understanding that, well, the reasonableness, if I'm not even sure if that's a word by now, but the reasonableness of believing in a cosmos is as a necessary foundation would be the same as the reasonableness of believing in God as the foundation. And if that's the case, and Matt believes that it is reasonable to believe that the cosmos is the cause of the universe, then it follows that, at least from a probabilistic standard, it is just as reasonable to believe that God is the foundation of the universe. And that's just something to just bear in mind. The consequences of his argument for the cosmos would just show that people believing in God, while might not be true, would nevertheless be reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, again, because I think about this idea of we both agree there's a foundation, and the question is can we build a bridge from there being a foundation to it being God, or why not say it's the cosmos? And I'm just comparing the two hypotheses here. So if we have the cosmos, well, this is probably something material. Matt's not a panpsychist, so he's not going to say it's material and mind. It's probably just material. I'm a theist. I'm going to say the foundation is God. Matt's going to say probably there's some limits. I mean, I guess if it's infinite, maybe you could say, well, just everything exists. But it just seems really weird and counterintuitive to say everything exists. So there's got to be some limit there. Whereas the theist probably isn't going to have this limit. We can explain. There's no unexplained limits is basically what I'm trying to say. So it seems like the theist would have the advantage from a simplicity perspective because they're both posing one thing, and then I have no limits, he has limits, and then we're not even getting into explanatory power and what best predicts the world and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. This part, this last 10 minutes was kind of weird to me. I wasn't exactly sure what's going on. That's kind of my take on this section.
I completely agree with that. I think that's a very interesting kind of way to put on it. And I definitely agree with you that there's way more agreement in these arguments or in these discussions than normally meets the eyes. Because I think we're all just so used to hearing this kind of landscape where it's the atheist on one side, atheist camp versus the Christian camp, when it comes down to the actual discussions and arguments between the representations of both sides, the representatives, there's actually a lot of agreement. It's just over the small details where we're just trying to build bridges beyond our common agreements to further conclusions or arguments.
Mm-hmm.